He was the Mafia boss's disabled son, alone at his birthday table, until a poor girl walked in. Paralyzed and isolated, the crime heir watches as guests avoid him, paying respects only to his feared father. When the desperate waitress accidentally spills champagne on a mobster's wife, she makes a bold choice to serve only him. But what begins as her attempt to save her job quickly becomes a trap she can't escape. Your brother gets the best care in the country as long as you stay. Walk away, and you both have nothing. What neither of them knows is that her father wasn't just an ordinary man who disappeared. He was one of their organization's most loyal enforcers, framed for a crime he never committed. As bullets fly and secrets explode, they'll discover the truth behind her father's disappearance threatens not just their forbidden romance, but the entire criminal empire. Will the waitress who saw beyond his wheelchair become his greatest weakness? Or the one person who finally makes him the most dangerous man in Chicago? Through the chaos of shattering champagne flutes and shocked gasps, Sophia's world narrowed to the spreading dark stain on the capo's wife's silk dress. The woman's face contorted with rage, her carefully applied makeup cracking as she shrieked, "You stupid girl! Do you have any idea how much this dress costs?" Sophia's hands trembled as she dropped to her knees, frantically gathering broken glass. Sharp edges bit into her palms, but she barely noticed the pain. All she could think about was Marco's medication, the past due rent notices, and the impossible choice between food and electricity last month. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Please let me help. Don't touch me!" The woman recoiled, her voice carrying across the opulent ballroom. "I want her fired. Now!" The party guests turned to stare, creating a bubble of tense silence in the otherwise music-filled room. Sophia felt their judgment like a physical weight, crushing her chest until she could barely breathe. Her manager, Mr. Peterson, appeared at her elbow, his face a mask of barely contained fury. "Ms. Russo, my office, immediately." Sophia risked one final glance at the scene as she stood. Through the crowd, she caught Alessio Ricci watching the drama unfold. His expression remained neutral, but something in his dark eyes made her pause. Unlike the pity or disdain she'd seen others direct at him all evening, his gaze held sharp intelligence and calculation. The walk to Peterson's office felt like a march to execution. Each step echoed against the marble floors, marking time until her life fell apart. Again. Sophia's mind raced through options. Maybe she could beg for another chance, offer to pay for the dress, take extra shifts. But the reality of her situation crashed down as Peterson closed his office door with devastating finality. "Ms. Russo, I warned you this morning. One more mistake. Please, Mr. Peterson, I'll do anything. Work double shifts, clean the kitchens. After hours, whatever you need." The words tumbled out, desperation making her voice crack. "My brother's medication costs thousands each month. Without this job." Peterson's expression softened slightly, but his voice remained firm. "I understand your situation is difficult, but I can't overlook this. That was Carmela Russo you doused in champagne, wife of one of our most important clients. The Riccis don't tolerate disrespect, even accidental." Sophia's stomach churned at the name. Everyone in Chicago knew about the Ricci family's brutal response to perceived slights. "I didn't mean any disrespect, I was just distracted. Yes, I noticed you watching the head table instead of minding your tray." Peterson sighed, shuffling papers on his desk. "I have to let you go, Sophia. Clear out your locker and collect your final check from payroll." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Sophia stood frozen, reality crashing down around her. Without this job's health insurance, Marco's medication would cost even more out of pocket. Without her salary, they'd be evicted within weeks. She'd failed him, failed her promise to their mother to keep him safe. "Please," she whispered one final time, hating the weakness in her voice but too desperate to care. "My brother will die without his medication." "I'm sorry, Sophia. Security will escort you out." The walk to the employee locker room passed in a blur. Sophia mechanically gathered her few belongings, spare shoes, deodorant, the granola bars she kept for long shifts. Her uniform felt like a costume now, a reminder of another lost chance at stability. In the bathroom, she changed into her street clothes with trembling hands. The face in the mirror looked strange, pale and hollow-eyed, with carefully styled hair and makeup that now seemed pointless. She'd spent an extra 30 minutes getting ready this morning, hoping to look professional enough to convince Peterson to keep her on. The contents of her locker fit into a single canvas tote bag. As she headed toward the employee exit, voices drifted from the service corridor, kitchen staff gossiping about the incident. Did you see her face when the champagne hit? I thought Carmela Viveri was going to have security break her legs. Better than what her husband might do. Nobody crosses the Ricci's and gets away clean. At least the boss's son seemed entertained. First time I've seen him smile all night. Sophia hurried past, cheeks burning. The heavy exit door stuck slightly as she pushed it open, spilling her into the chilly Chicago night. Stars glittered coldly overhead, indifferent to her crisis. She dug her phone from her bag with shaking hands, dreading the call she had to make. Marco answered on the first ring. "Hey sis, how's the fancy party?" "Marco," her voice cracked. There was an accident. I lost the job." The silence on the other end felt endless. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled, trying to sound stronger than his. 16 years. "It's okay, Sophia. We'll figure something out. We always do." But they both knew they were running out of options. Sophia leaned against the cold brick wall, letting tears finally fall as she clutched the phone. "I'm so sorry, little brother. I promised to take care of you, and I keep failing." "You never fail me," Marco said fiercely. "Never. Whatever happens, we face it together." Sophia wiped her eyes, straightening her spine. She couldn't break down now. Marco needed her to be strong. "I'll start applying for new jobs tomorrow. Maybe I can get more hours at the diner, pick up some cleaning work on the side." But even as she spoke, she knew it wouldn't be enough. Marco's next treatment was due in 2 weeks, and their savings wouldn't cover half the cost. She needed a miracle, or a job that paid far more than serving champagne to Chicago's criminal elite. The capo's wife's shrieks echoed through the ballroom. "Look what this clumsy bitch did to my Versace. Do you know how much this costs?" Sophia barely registered Mr. Peterson's iron grip on her arm as he steered her toward the back offices. Her mind raced, calculating the cost of Marco's next treatment, their overdue rent, the empty kitchen cabinets at home. She couldn't lose this job. Breaking free from Peterson's grasp, Sophia spun and strode directly to Alessio Ricci's table. Crystal glasses clinked into silence. Forks froze midway to open mouths. Even the band seemed to hold its breath. "Mr. Ricci," Sophia said, her voice steady despite her thundering heart. "I would like to make amends by serving as your personal attendant for the remainder of the evening. No other guests, just you." Alessio's dark eyes studied her with predatory focus. His fingers traced the rim of his empty whiskey glass as the silence stretched. Unlike the others at the party who avoided looking directly at him, Sophia met his gaze. "And why would I want that?" he asked, his voice smooth and controlled. "Because I'm excellent at my job, when I'm not being distracted by rude comments about the guest of honor." She gestured subtly toward the capo's still shrieking wife. A hint of amusement flickered across his face. "Bold of you to assume I heard anything." Your jaw tightened, your grip on your glass shifted. "You noticed." His eyebrows rose slightly at her observation. After another long moment, he nodded. "Very well, you may attend to me for the evening." Throughout the next few hours, Sophia anticipated Alessio's needs with quiet efficiency. She kept his whiskey glass filled, adjusted the table settings to accommodate his wheelchair's position, and engaged in brief conversations between services. "You don't seem afraid of me," he remarked during one such exchange. "Should I be afraid of someone who clearly prefers Glenlivet 18 but drinks whatever swill they're serving tonight without complaint?" That earned her a genuine smile, transforming his severe features. "You know your whiskey." "I know how to read." "People." You grimace slightly with each sip, but you're too polite to say anything. Their easy rapport continued until Lieutenant Bianchi from the rival Viveri family approached, swaying slightly from too much champagne. "How sweet," Bianchi sneered. "The cripple found himself a waitress girlfriend to keep him company." The room tensed. Sophia felt Alessio's energy shift beside her, coiled like a serpent ready to strike. Before he could respond, Sophia turned to Bianchi with a sympathetic smile. "Lieutenant, I heard about your recent performance issues. No wonder you're so bitter. Have you tried those little blue pills everyone's talking about? Though I suppose it's hard to get it up when you're so busy going down on the boss's boots." Gasps rippled through the nearby tables. Bianchi's face purpled with rage and embarrassment. Alessio's quiet laugh carried in the sudden silence. As the party wound down, Alessio gestured for Sophia to follow him to the hotel's business center. The wood-paneled room smelled of leather and expensive cologne. "You're wasted serving drinks," he said, positioning his wheelchair behind a mahogany desk. "I need a personal assistant, someone efficient, observant, and unafraid to speak their mind. The salary would be triple what you make here, plus benefits." Sophia's heart leaped at the mention of benefits. Marco's treatments would be covered. but before she could respond, shouts erupted from the hallway. One of Alessio's security men burst in. "Sir, the security feed shows Lieutenant Bianchi waiting in the kitchen. He's drunk and armed." "I'll handle it myself," Sophia said, already moving toward the door. "Not alone," Alessio's voice carried the weight of command. When Sophia tried to protest, he cut her off. "This isn't a negotiation." They found Bianchi in the industrial kitchen, reeking of alcohol and rage. He lunged for Sophia, but she was ready. Grabbing a heavy steel pan, she swung it with precise force, catching him in the shoulder. As he stumbled, she kicked his knee, sending him crashing into a rack of dishes. Alessio's men emerged from the shadows, efficiently restraining the lieutenant. Sophia noticed Alessio watching her with intense interest. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" he asked. "You don't work late nights in Chicago without picking up a few skills." Alessio's expression hardened as he turned to his men. "Take Mr. Bianchi somewhere private. I want to discuss the proper way to treat my employees." The lieutenant's face drained of color as he was dragged away. Sophia watched, absently rubbing her knuckles where they'd connected with the pan. The kitchen's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the stainless steel surfaces, making everything look sharp and dangerous. "So," Alessio said, drawing her attention back to him. "About that job offer." Sophia studied him thoughtfully. In the harsh kitchen lighting, she could see past his carefully maintained facade. There was something in his eyes, a loneliness that matched her own desperate need to protect what mattered most. "I have conditions," she said. "Of course you do." His smile held equal parts amusement and respect. "Shall we discuss them somewhere more comfortable than a kitchen?" Sophia's hands trembled as she climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment at 2 a.m. Her feet ached from the long shift, and Alessio's generous job offer echoed in her mind. Triple salary, benefits, security. She'd still turned it down. Her instincts screamed that accepting would mean surrendering more than just her time. The hallway's flickering fluorescent light revealed her apartment door hanging askew, splintered near the handle. Her heart stopped. "Marco?" she called, rushing inside. "Marco?" "I'm here." His voice wavered from his bedroom. "I'm okay." The apartment was ransacked. Their few valuable possessions, her mother's jewelry, their ancient laptop, even the emergency cash hidden in the cereal box, all gone. An eviction notice fluttered on the door, stamped in angry red letters. 48 hours. Marco emerged, his face pale and drawn. "These men came looking for you. They had tattoos, one on the neck like a snake." He hugged himself, shivering. "When they couldn't find you, they took everything, even my medicine." Sophia's blood ran cold. Marco needed that medication daily to manage his blood disorder. Without it, "Mrs. Rodriguez," she called, knocking on their elderly neighbor's door. "Could you watch Marco for an hour? I need to get his medication." The all-night pharmacy's fluorescent lights cast sickly shadows as Sophia approached the counter. "Refill for Marco Russo, please." The pharmacist frowned at his computer. "I'm sorry, but your insurance shows as terminated. Without coverage, it's $2,000 for a week's supply." "That's impossible. I just filled it last week." Sophia's voice cracked. "Please, he needs it." "Nothing I can do without payment or valid insurance." Sophia stumbled out into the dark street, tears blurring her vision. A black SUV purred to life, rolling alongside her. The tinted window descended smoothly. "Miss Russo." Alessio's chief of security, a scarred man she recognized from the party, gave her a practiced smile. "The boss thought you might have second thoughts about his offer after tonight's unfortunate events at your apartment." She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm night. "What makes you think that?" "Just a hunch." He handed her a thick envelope. "Your first week's salary advance if you accept, plus immediate relocation to a secure apartment in Mr. Ricci's building. Full medical coverage for your brother starts immediately." Sophia's phone buzzed. A text from her landlord. "Building sold. All tenants must vacate within 48 hours. No exceptions." Her hands shaking, she tried calling her previous employers for references to find new work. Each call ended the same way. "Sorry, we have no record of anyone named Sophia Russo, ever, working here." By evening, Marco's condition was deteriorating. He lay on the couch, his skin clammy, dark circles under his eyes. Without his medication, his blood wouldn't clot properly. Any minor injury could become life-threatening. 2 more black SUVs appeared outside their building, their engines idling with quiet menace. Men in dark suits emerged, efficiently loading their belongings into the vehicles. "The penthouse apartment is ready," one said, holding open the car door. Mr. Ricci has arranged for a doctor to examine Marco immediately. Sophia looked at her brother's pale face, then at the envelope containing enough money to keep them afloat for weeks. Their possessions fit into just 3 boxes? A life reduced to so little, yet still somehow worth destroying to force her hand. This isn't a job offer, she thought bitterly as they entered the gleaming elevator to Alessio's penthouse floor. It's ownership papers. Her expression hardened as the numbers climbed. 15, 16, 17, each floor taking them further from their old life, each chime of the elevator marking the price of her brother's survival. Marco leaned against her, exhausted. Are we going to be okay? Sophia squeezed his shoulder, remembering their mother's last words before her heart gave out. Keep him safe. Promise me. The elevator continued its ascent. 28, 29, 30. The lights inside were soft, the walls lined with polished wood and brass. Everything screamed wealth and power, the kind that could erase someone's entire life with a few phone calls. She thought of Alessio at his birthday party, sitting alone while others whispered. How he'd watched her with those calculating eyes, seeing past her uniform to something useful, something he could own. 35, 36, 37. The elevator's soft hum couldn't mask the thunder of her heart. She'd fought so hard to keep them independent, worked herself to exhaustion, avoiding exactly this kind of debt. Now here she was, walking straight into the lion's den. Marco's breathing grew labored. She felt his forehead, fever rising. They needed that doctor, needed the medication, needed everything being dangled just out of reach unless she submitted. 40, 41, 42. The elevator slowed. Sophia straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin. If this was surrender, she'd do it on her feet, with her head high. She might be forced to accept Alessio's terms, but she wouldn't cower. The doors opened silently onto the penthouse floor. Marble floors stretched ahead, security cameras tracking their movement. 2 men in suits stood at attention beside double doors marked with the Ricci family crest. Marco stumbled slightly. Sophia caught him, her arm around his waist. Each step echoed in the hushed hallway, footsteps marking their path past the point of no return. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows as Sophia woke in sheets softer than anything she'd ever touched. For a moment, she lay disoriented in the massive guest suite. Memories of last night flooding back, the broken apartment, Marco's illness, the forced choice. Marco. She bolted upright, throwing off the silk duvet. A sharp knock preceded a woman in a crisp uniform entering with a garment bag. Good morning, Miss Russo. Your brother has been transferred to the Ricci family's private medical facility for comprehensive evaluation. What? No, I need to. Mr. Ricci requires your presence in his office immediately. The woman's tone brooked no argument as she laid out designer clothes. The bathroom is stocked with everything you need. 20 minutes later, Sophia followed another staff member through the penthouse's maze of corridors. Her new clothes felt like a costume, expensive armor she hadn't chosen. Alessio's office door stood open. He sat before a wall of screens displaying cascading numbers in angry red. Without looking up, he gestured her inside. Close the door. Where's my brother? Safe, getting the best care available. His eyes remained fixed on the screens. The Costello family is attempting to bankrupt us. They found a way into our accounts. Sophia watched millions vanish in real time. What does this have to do with me? I need your hands. He finally turned to face her. My mind can track these transactions, but I need someone who can execute commands quickly while I direct. Someone who understands financial systems. I'm a waitress who managed complex books for 3 establishments simultaneously. His smile held no warmth. Yes, I've seen your employment history, the real one. More numbers plummeted. Alessio cursed softly. Decision time, Sophia. Help me stop this bleeding or watch the protection around your brother evaporate along with those millions. She slid into the chair he indicated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Tell me what to do. For hours, Sophia worked as Alessio's extension, implementing his rapid-fire instructions. Despite her anger, she found herself impressed by his strategic brilliance. He anticipated the attackers' moves, laying traps within traps, using their own greed against them. Transfer another $50 million to the Singapore account, he ordered, then split it between the shell companies we established. The money's not really going to Singapore, is it? Sophia asked as her fingers flew across keys. Good catch. Was that approval in his voice? It's bait. When they try to grab it, We can trace their real access point. The ghost of a real smile touched his lips. Exactly. By late afternoon, her head throbbed from staring at screens. I need to see Marco. Not until this is contained. He's my brother. Who's receiving care that would bankrupt most hospitals in a day? Alessio's voice turned glacial. Care that depends on the very accounts we're defending. Sophia pushed back from the desk. You're holding him hostage? I'm protecting my investment. He gestured to the screens. All of my investments. Evening found them still, locked in battle, though they had managed to stem the worst of the attacks. Sophia's vision blurred with exhaustion. I'm done, she announced. I'm seeing my brother. Alessio pressed a button on his desk. A screen lit up with live video feed. Marco lay in a pristine hospital room, attended by multiple doctors. The equipment surrounding him looked more advanced than anything in his previous hospitals. Satisfied? Alessio asked. Sophia headed for the door. 2 guards blocked her path. The soft whir of Alessio's wheelchair followed her. Your brother receives the best care in the country, as long as you stay. His businesslike tone could have been discussing the weather. Walk away, and you both have nothing. No insurance, no references, no future. Your choice. She turned, meeting his cold stare. There's no choice, and you know it. Back in her suite, Sophia discovered another truth. The electronic lock clicked as the guards departed. From the outside, she tested the handle. Locked. Crossing to the windows, she pressed her forehead against cool glass. Chicago's lights sparkled 42 stories below, as distant as her freedom. The room's luxury mocked her with its perfection. Egyptian cotton sheets, hand-painted silk wallpaper, furniture worth more than years of her salary. A gilded cage was still a cage. She explored every inch of her prison, noting security cameras in the corners, the tablet loaded with streaming services, but no outside communication, the bathroom's museum-quality fixtures. Even the closet had been filled with designer clothes in exactly her size. How long had Alessio planned this? The thought chilled her. He'd orchestrated everything. The apartment break-in, the insurance cancellation, the lost jobs. Like moves in the same strategic game she'd watched him play today. She was just another investment to protect, another asset to control. The fact that he needed her brother to ensure her cooperation probably pleased him. Neat, efficient leverage. Exhaustion finally drove her to the bed. The sheets still felt impossibly soft, but now they seemed to whisper of debt and obligation, of ownership. Through the windows, lights continued to sparkle. City life, moving forward while her world had narrowed to these expensive walls. Somewhere in that glittering expanse, Marco lay surrounded by machines and strangers. Safe, cared for, but as much a prisoner as she was. The lock clicked again from outside, a quiet reminder of her new reality. 3 days had turned Sophia into an unwilling expert on Alessio Ricci's habits. Black coffee at precisely 180 degrees. Financial reports arranged by sector, then alphabetically. His preference for the right side of his massive desk, positioned to see both the door and windows simultaneously. She entered his office that morning, balancing the coffee and a stack of reports, finding him exactly where she'd left him the night before. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his white shirt wrinkled from hours of work. Multiple screens displayed transaction trails, the breadcrumbs of their stolen millions. Your coffee, she said, placing it in the exact spot she'd learned he preferred. And the morning reports. He didn't look up, fingers flying across his keyboard. Summarize the Asian markets. Sophia had already memorized the key points. Shanghai down 3%, Hong Kong stable, Singapore showing unusual activity in shipping futures. She paused. The same pattern we saw before the cyber attack. Now he did look up, sharp intelligence cutting through his exhaustion. Show me! She leaned over his shoulder, pointing out the suspicious transactions. His cologne, subtle, expensive, caught her attention this close. So did the cord of muscle in his forearm as he scrolled through data. Good catch, he said. We'll redirect their next attempt straight into our trap accounts. Throughout the morning, Sophia watched Alessio orchestrate financial warfare with ruthless precision. He manipulated markets across time zones, setting elaborate traps disguised as opportunities. Under his direction, she helped execute complex transactions that recovered millions while leading their enemies into carefully laid snares. His office itself was a testament to strategic thinking, everything within precise reach from his wheelchair. Files, devices, even the coffee maker in the corner. No wasted movement, no unnecessary effort. The whole space functioned as smoothly as his mind. Transfer another 100 million through Dubai, he instructed. Split it between these 7 accounts. That's not really where the money's going, is it? Sophia asked, recognizing the pattern. A ghost of approval crossed his face. No. When they try to intercept it, we'll have their real access points. She was learning to think like him, anticipating moves ahead. Exactly. He wheeled to another screen, checking data streams. You're starting to understand the game. At 2 o'clock, his head of security arrived to escort Sophia to the medical facility. Her heart raced as they approached Marco's room, but her anxiety eased at the sight of him. Color had returned to his cheeks. New medications and treatments were already showing results. Sophie! He grinned, looking more energetic than she'd seen in months. You won't believe the tests they can do here. Dr. Chen says they're trying treatments that aren't even available in regular hospitals yet. She hugged him tightly, noting the improved strength in his return embrace. You look better. Feel better, too. He showed her his tablet. They even got me into this coding program I wanted to try. The visit ended too soon. Back in the penthouse, she found Alessio in the hallway, his wheelchair stuck on something. Without thinking, she knelt beside him to examine the problem. The brake's caught, she said, reaching under to release it. Her arm brushed his leg. He wouldn't have felt it, but she became acutely aware of their proximity. His hand gripped the armrest inches from her face, knuckles white with tension. She sat back on her heels, suddenly conscious of crossing an unspoken boundary. His expression was unreadable, but the air between them felt charged. Thank you, he said stiffly, wheeling away. That evening, she brought dinner to his office, another habit formed over 3 days of captivity. Multiple screens showed security footage from the hotel kitchen, playing on loop. Her own image defended against Bianchi with improvised weapons and practice moves. Where does a waitress learn to fight like that? Alessio asked without preamble. Sophia set down his dinner, watching her recorded self disable a trained enforcer with a serving tray. My father insisted, before he disappeared. Disappeared? His tone was carefully neutral. 9 years ago. She kept her voice steady, despite the familiar ache. He worked construction. One day he just never came home, left us with nothing but debt and questions. Alessio's expression shifted subtly, a calculating interest that Sophia missed as she stared at the footage, lost in memories. The self-defense lessons were the last gift he gave me, she continued. Made me practice every day after school. Said Chicago was too dangerous for a girl who couldn't protect herself. She shook her head. Guess he was right about that part. She gestured at the screens. Those moves kept food on our table more than once. Drunk customers think twice about skipping tips when their wrists end up twisted behind their backs. Alessio watched her carefully. Your father taught you well. He taught me to survive. Sophia straightened, pushing away old pain. Will there be anything else? No. He turned back to his screens, but she felt his attention lingering. That will be all. Sophia's heels clicked against marble as she followed Alessio through the Ricci family's downtown offices. Gone was the man who worked late into the night, tie loosened, sharing quiet observations over coffee. In his place sat a calculated force of nature, every movement precise, radiating cold authority. Associates parted before his wheelchair like waves before a battleship. The transformation fascinated her, how his disability seemed to heighten rather than diminish his presence. No one dared meet his eyes directly. In the conference room, Sophia took her place slightly behind Alessio's right shoulder, tablet ready. The meeting concerned a shipping merger worth billions. She watched him command the room without raising his voice, those brilliant eyes missing nothing. When the discussion turned to specific figures, Sophia noticed a discrepancy in the proposal. The decimal point in section 7.3 was misplaced, a subtle error that would cost the Ricci's millions if overlooked. She waited for a natural pause, then leaned down to whisper in Alessio's ear. His eyes flickered to the section she indicated. A barely perceptible nod authorized her to speak. Gentlemen, Sophia said smoothly, I believe there's a minor clerical error in section 7.3 that needs addressing before we proceed. The room tensed at her interruption, but when the error became clear, impressed murmurs circulated. Alessio's mouth curved slightly, the closest he came to a public smile. After the meeting concluded, Sophia headed to the file room to archive sensitive documents. The space was isolated, walls lined with secure cabinets. She was sorting papers when Vincent Calabrese appeared in the doorway. She'd noticed him during the meeting, a mid-level associate who'd spoken little but watched her constantly. Now he lounged against the frame, blocking her exit. Impressive catch earlier, he said, moving closer. Smart girl like you deserves better than playing nursemaid to the cripple. Sophia stiffened. Mr. Ricci is an excellent employer. Come on, sweetheart. Vincent invaded her space, forcing her back against a desk. Pretty thing like you needs a real man. I've got a much more satisfying position available. His hand slid along her waist. Sophia grabbed his wrist, ready to defend herself, but froze at the sound of quiet wheels. Alessio sat in the doorway, his expression arctic. Sophia, I left my phone in the conference room. Please retrieve it. She hesitated, trapped between Vincent's bulk and the desk. Every instinct screamed not to leave Alessio alone with this man. Now, Sophia. His tone allowed no argument. She slipped past Vincent, feeling his eyes follow her. At the door, she glanced back. Alessio's calm was terrifying, like watching a cobra coil before striking. The walk to the conference room felt endless. Sophia's hands shook as she collected the phone Alessio had deliberately left behind. She delayed returning as long as she dared, straightening chairs, adjusting blinds. When 10 minutes had passed, she forced herself to go back. The file room door stood open. Vincent remained inside, barely. He slumped against the wall, nose clearly broken, breathing in wet gasps. Several fingers bent at unnatural angles. A thin line of blood traced his collar. Alessio sat exactly where she'd left him, pristine in his tailored suit. Only the subtle tension in his shoulders and forearms hinted at recent exertion. Mr. Calabrese and I discussed appropriate workplace conduct, he said conversationally. I believe he better understands my position now. Don't you, Vincent? Vincent nodded frantically, cradling his mangled hand. Excellent. You may go. I suggest visiting a discreet medical facility, one that doesn't ask questions. Once Vincent stumbled out, Sophia stared at Alessio. She should have been horrified by the casual violence. Instead, heat curled through her at the thought of his strength, at how efficiently he'd defended her. The phone, please! His voice was perfectly steady. She placed it in his outstretched hand, hyper-aware of the corded muscle in his forearm, the power contained in those fingers that had just broken a man's bones. Sophia! She met his eyes, finding them warmer than before. No one touches what belongs to me, he said quietly, not without consequences. The possessive statement should have angered her. Instead, it sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. I don't belong to anyone, she managed. His smile was dangerous. We both know that's not entirely true anymore. He wheeled past her toward the door. Come, we have other meetings. Sophia followed, her pulse racing. In that moment, she couldn't decide which was more unsettling, Alessio's capacity for violence or her body's treacherous response to his display of power. His words echoed in her mind. No one touches what belongs to me. The worst part was, he wasn't entirely wrong. Between Marco's care and her own growing fascination with the complex man behind the cold facade, she was bound to Alessio Ricci by chains stronger than any contract. The fact that those chains no longer felt entirely like a burden only complicated matters further. Thunder cracked overhead as Sophia gathered financial reports in the penthouse office. 2 weeks had passed since the Calabrese incident, and she'd settled into an uneasy routine with Alessio. The storm that had been threatening all day finally unleashed its fury on Chicago, rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows. The lights flickered once, twice, then plunged the office into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, casting everything in a dim red glow. Sophia! Alessio's voice was sharp, unusual for his typically controlled tone. We need to move to the secure room. She turned to find him already wheeling toward the door, his movements more abrupt than his usual fluid grace. Is that necessary? The emergency generators. Now! The word cracked like another thunderbolt. Sophia hurried to keep up as he navigated the darkened penthouse. The secure room was a fortified space with independent power and communications. She'd never seen inside it, but she knew it existed, another layer of protection in Alessio's carefully controlled world. Halfway there, the backup generator failed. Complete darkness enveloped them, heavy and absolute. Sophia heard a sharp intake of breath, followed by ragged breathing that had nothing to do with exertion. Alessio! She fumbled for her phone, activating its flashlight. The beam illuminated him gripping his wheelchair's arms so tightly his knuckles showed white against his skin. His face had lost all color, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. His chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow movements. Sophia recognized the signs from Marco's worst episodes. Without hesitation, she knelt before Alessio's chair, covering his clenched hands with her own. Breathe with me, she said firmly. In through your nose, count to 4, hold it. Now out through your mouth, count to 6. He resisted at first, his breathing still erratic. Sophia squeezed his hands. Focus on my voice. In, 2, 3, 4. Gradually, his breathing steadied, matching her count. His grip on the wheelchair loosened slightly, though he didn't pull away from her touch. The phone's light created a small bubble of illumination around them, the rest of the world lost to shadow. In this intimate darkness, the usual barriers between them seemed thinner. I was 12, Alessio said suddenly, his voice rough. The car was armored, but they used military-grade explosives. Killed my security detail instantly. Sophia remained silent, her thumbs tracing unconscious circles on his hands. I couldn't move, couldn't feel my legs, just darkness and weight and the copper smell of blood. 4 hours before they found me under the bodies of men who died protecting me. He laughed bitterly. The great Dante Ricci's heir, trapped like a rat. The families whispered it was divine punishment, my father's ambition crippling his only son. That party, Sophia said softly, understanding dawning. It wasn't really about your birthday. My father's test. See who would approach the cripple when not forced by protocol. His voice turned harsh. No one did, except you. Because I spilled champagne on Mrs. Bianchi's dress, Sophia reminded him. No. His grip tightened on her hands. Because you saw me, not the chair, not the name, me. Everyone else sees a broken thing. Their fear or pity or contempt. It's all the same. Just confirmation that I'll never be more than half a man in their eyes. The darkness made honesty easier. You're more man than any of them, Sophia said. That's why they fear you. The chair doesn't make you weak. It forced you to become stronger than they could imagine. Partial power returned, emergency lights casting soft shadows across Alessio's face. His eyes locked onto hers, with an intensity that made her breath catch. What do you see when you look at me, Sophia? Her heart hammered against her ribs. I see the man, she whispered. That's what terrifies me. The admission hung between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Alessio's hand lifted slowly toward her face. Sophia remained perfectly still, caught between wanting to lean into his touch and needing to maintain the fragile boundaries between them. His fingers hovered near her cheek, close enough that she felt their warmth. For a moment, the storm outside faded away, leaving only their shared breath in the dim light. Then Alessio withdrew his hand, the mask of control sliding back into place. But something had shifted between them, a line not yet crossed, but increasingly impossible to ignore. Sophia rose slowly, her legs unsteady. The full emergency power hummed back to life, harsh fluorescent light flooding the hallway. The intimate atmosphere created by darkness and confession evaporated, leaving them standing in their usual positions. Employer and employee, captor and captive, two people bound by circumstance and growing attraction they couldn't afford to acknowledge. The secure room, Alessio said, his voice returning to its normal businesslike tone. But his hand still trembled slightly on his wheelchair's controls, and Sophia noticed he kept her within arm's reach as they continued down the hallway. Thunder rolled again outside, but the sound held less menace now. They had shared something in the darkness, a trust as fragile as it was profound. Sophia couldn't help wondering if, like the storm, this tension between them would eventually break, and what would be left in its wake. The secure room door opened with a pneumatic hiss. Sophia followed Alessio inside, carrying the weight of his confession and her own dangerous honesty. Whatever happened next, there was no going back to simpler times when he was just her captor and she was just his prisoner. The darkness had revealed too much of them both. Sophia stared at the medical file on her tablet, her hands trembling with rage. 3 months ago, a contaminated batch of party drugs had hospitalized 12 teenagers in her old neighborhood. Marco had been at a friend's house that night, pressured into trying something that nearly killed him, and Alessio had known. All along! She stormed into his office, throwing the tablet onto his desk. The Costellos. It was their drugs that poisoned Marco. Alessio didn't look up from his computer. Yes. That single word, delivered with such casual indifference, made her blood boil. You knew. This whole time you knew what happened to him. Of course I knew. He finally met her gaze, his expression calculating. I make it my business to know everything that affects my interests. Your interests? Sophia's voice shook. My brother almost died. And now he's receiving the best medical care in the country. Alessio's wheelchair hummed as he moved around his desk. Care that wouldn't be available to him otherwise. You use this information to manipulate me, to control me. I use every advantage I have. His tone remained perfectly neutral. That shouldn't surprise you by now. Sophia stepped closer, fury overwhelming her usual caution. I trusted you. I actually started to believe. She cut herself off, choking on the words. Believe what? Alessio's eyes narrowed. That I was something other than what I am? I'm a businessman, Sophia. Everything is a transaction. Including me? The question hung between them like a blade. Especially you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Sophia backed away, vision blurring. I'm done. Marco and I are leaving. Don't be foolish. No, she slashed her hand through the air. I'd rather take my chances with the Costellos than spend another minute being your puppet. She turned toward the elevator, legs shaking but determined. Behind her, Alessio started to speak, then suddenly barked, Get down! Glass shattered as bullets sprayed through the window. Sophia dropped instinctively, covering her head as alarms blared. Through the chaos, she heard Alessio's wheelchair moving and the distinctive sound of a gun being cocked. She looked up to see him positioning himself behind a concrete pillar, weapon drawn. The building's security system engaged with metallic thuds, but shouting from the lobby suggested it was too late. Panic room, now! Alessio's command cut through the noise. Sophia watched him trying to manage his wheelchair and weapon simultaneously. I'm not leaving you here. This isn't a debate. Shut up and let me help! She scrambled to the security panel, fingers flying over the controls. We've got hostiles on floors 1 through 3, stairwells compromised. Alessio's eyebrows rose slightly. You know our security protocols? I pay attention. She activated the emergency lockdown sequence. East stairwell team, approaching floor 60. They worked in focused tandem, Sophia coordinating with security through the building systems while Alessio directed tactical responses. When the power flickered, she immediately shifted to backup protocols without being told. You've been studying our emergency procedures, Alessio noted between giving orders. Knowledge is leverage, right? Sophia's bitter tone made him wince. A crash from the hallway interrupted their exchange. Sophia ducked as bullets peppered the doorway. She glimpsed a Costello shooter taking aim, not at Alessio, but at her. Everything happened in slow motion. She saw Alessio's expression change, saw him register the threat. His wheelchair surged forward with shocking speed as he threw himself between Sophia and the gunman. The impact knocked her backward. Alessio's gun barked twice, and the shooter dropped. But red was already spreading across Alessio's shoulder, staining his expensive shirt. No, no, no! Sophia pressed her hands against the wound as security finally reached their floor. The metallic smell of blood filled her nose. So much blood. I need medical up here now. Sophia. Alessio's voice was strained but steady. The secure room. If you tell me to go to the panic room one more time, I swear I'll shoot you myself. She maintained pressure on his shoulder, her earlier anger forgotten in the face of his pale features and labored breathing. The corner of his mouth twitched. Noted. More security flooded in, reporting the building was clear. Someone tried to pull Sophia away from Alessio, but she shrugged them off. The bullet's still in there, she said, helping medical staff transfer him from the wheelchair to a gurney. Upper right quadrant, possible arterial involvement based on blood loss. The lead medic gave her an approving look. You have medical training? No, I just... Sophia swallowed hard. I pay attention. As they wheeled Alessio toward the elevator, his hand caught her wrist. The grip was weaker than usual, but still commanding. Stay close. It wasn't clear if he meant for her protection or his. Sophia nodded, her throat tight as she watched blood seep through the bandages. He'd taken a bullet for her, the man who claimed everything was a transaction, who supposedly saw her as nothing but an asset. The elevator doors closed on the chaos of the penthouse. Sophia stood next to Alessio's gurney, her hand still caught in his grip, wondering how someone could simultaneously be the source of her greatest fury and her greatest concern. The answer terrified her more than any gunfire. Sophia watched the steady rise and fall of Alessio's chest, her eyes burning from lack of sleep. The private hospital suite was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. Though the doctors had assured her the shoulder wound wasn't life-threatening, the image of blood soaking his shirt haunted her. She'd refused to leave when security tried to escort her out, and surprisingly, no one had pushed the issue. Now morning light filtered through bulletproof windows, casting a golden glow across Alessio's sleeping face. He looked younger, less guarded in rest. His eyes fluttered open, immediately alert despite the pain medication. You're still here. Someone has to make sure you don't try working from the hospital bed. Sophia's attempt at lightness fell flat. The Costellos won't wait for me to recover. He started to push himself up, wincing. Let me help. Sophia adjusted the bed and supported his injured side. The casual touch sent awareness skittering across her skin. Report, he commanded, though his voice was rougher than usual. Security contained the breach. 17 Costello soldiers eliminated, 3 captured for questioning. They targeted you specifically, using the drug investigation as cover. And you're unhurt? His eyes searched her face. Thanks to you. Sophia's throat tightened. That was stupid, by the way. Taking a bullet for your puppet? Is that what you think you are? Alessio's expression hardened. After everything? Before she could respond, his security chief arrived with urgent updates. Sophia helped Alessio dress for the video conferences that couldn't wait, her hands trembling slightly as she eased his injured arm into a dress shirt. His skin was warm beneath her fingers, hard muscle flexing as she worked each button. Throughout the day, she anticipated his needs, adjusting pillows, bringing water, supporting him during necessary movements. Each touch felt charged with something beyond their usual dynamic. When she helped him transfer to the wheelchair, her arms around his waist, his breath caught for reasons unrelated to pain. By evening, the strain showed in the tight lines around his mouth. He'd pushed too hard, as usual. Enough, Sophia said firmly, taking his phone. You need rest. Since when do you give orders? But there was no bite in his words. Since you took a bullet for me. She helped him back to bed, hyper-aware of his body against hers. When she turned to leave, his hand caught her wrist. Sophia. Just her name, but it held weight. She stared at his fingers, circling her wrist, feeling the moment balance on a knife's edge. This is a bad idea. Probably. His thumb traced her pulse point. Tell me to stop. Instead, she leaned down and pressed her lips to his. The kiss started gentle, mindful of his injury, but quickly blazed out of control. Alessio's good arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her onto the bed beside him. Your shoulder. Will heal. His mouth reclaimed hers, hungry and demanding. I need you more than I need rest. His kiss obliterated her reservations. She melted into him as his hands roamed her body, his touch setting her skin on fire. When he rolled her beneath him, supporting his weight on his good arm, she gasped at the raw strength in his upper body. I won't break, he murmured against her throat. And I'm going to prove exactly how capable I am. He was true to his word. What his legs couldn't do, his arms more than compensated for. He handled her with a power that left her breathless, his touch alternating between demanding and achingly gentle. Sophia lost herself in the pleasure of his mouth, his hands, the solid weight of him above her. Afterward, she traced the scars on his chest, learning the map of old wounds that had shaped him. Her fingers found the bullet marks from the childhood assassination attempt, the one that had taken his legs but forged him into steel. Everyone thought it made me weak, he said quietly. They never understood it made me stronger. Sophia studied his face in the dim light, seeing past the ruthless mask to the complexity beneath. This man who commanded empires and ordered deaths had taken a bullet to protect her. This man who claimed everything was a transaction had shown her a tenderness that belied his words. She was falling for him, not despite what he was, but because of it. Because she finally saw all of him, the calculated businessman and the passionate lover, the cold tactician and the wounded boy who'd survived against all odds. She was crossing a line she couldn't uncross, and the strangest part was that she no longer wanted to. His fingers tangled in her hair, drawing her down for another kiss. This one was slower, deeper, an acknowledgement of something shifting between them. When they parted, Sophia saw her own complicated emotions reflected in his eyes. You should rest, she whispered, but made no move to leave his arms. Stay. It wasn't quite a command, wasn't quite a request. Sophia settled against his uninjured side, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat. They'd figure out the implications tomorrow, the danger, the complications, the blurred lines between captive and lover. For now, she let herself sink into this moment of peace, knowing everything would be different come morning. Morning sunlight streamed through the penthouse windows as Sophia traced lazy circles on Alessio's chest. Security reports lay scattered across the silk sheets, their morning ritual of business mixed with intimacy. The shipment cleared customs, she murmured, scanning a document while nestled against his side. His fingers played with her hair as he reviewed figures on his tablet. The profit margins look better than projected. These quiet moments had become precious over the past 2 months. Soon they'd separate, she to her official guest suite, he to his home office, maintaining appearances before the staff arrived. But here, in the soft morning light, they could simply be. Sophia stretched and gathered the reports, pressing a kiss to his shoulder before sliding from the bed. I need those contract documents for the meeting with the union representatives. Check my office. Second drawer on the left. In Alessio's meticulously organized office, Sophia opened the indicated drawer but found no contracts. She tried the next drawer, then the next. In the bottom drawer, a manila folder caught her eye, older than the others, worn at the edges. Her breath caught when she opened it. Photos spilled out. Surveillance photos of her from months ago. Her leaving work at the hotel, shopping for groceries, visiting Marco at the hospital. Page after page of detailed background checks followed, along with financial records and school transcripts. But it was the last section that made her hands shake. Reports about her father, not the honest construction worker she'd known, but a man she didn't recognize. A Ricci enforcer. Details of violent acts committed under family orders. Bank transfers showing millions stolen, theories about his disappearance. Looking for something? She whirled to find Alessio in the doorway, his expression unreadable. How long? Her voice trembled. How long have you been investigating me? Since before we met. No point denying it now. Your father's betrayal cost the family millions. When you appeared at my party, I needed to know if it was coincidence. Coincidence? The word tasted bitter. You manipulated everything from the start. The job offer, Marco's treatment, it was all to keep me close while you investigated. Initially, yes, he wheeled closer. But Sophia, don't. She held up the photos. All this time, you knew the truth about my father. You watched me struggle to support Marco, knowing why we were abandoned. I had to be sure you weren't placed in my path as revenge. The timing of the Costello attacks. I thought he was a good man. The words burst from her. Do you understand? Everything I believed about him was a lie. Alessio reached for her hand, but she jerked away. I believe you're innocent. You clearly knew nothing about his activities. But the Costellos might not know that. Understanding dawned. That's why they targeted Marco's neighborhood with tainted drugs. Why they're still attacking. They think we have the money. It's possible. His jaw tightened. Which is why I've kept you close, protected. Protected? She laughed harshly. You've been lying to me since the moment we met. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. His father demanded Sophia's immediate presence. The walk to Dante's office felt endless. The family patriarch sat behind his massive desk, power radiating from his stillness. Sit. He gestured to the chair before him. We need to discuss your relationship with my son. Sophia's spine straightened. With all due respect, that's between Alessio and me. Nothing in this family is private. Dante's voice was silk over steel. My son has changed since you entered his life. He's softer, more hesitant. He's happier, she countered. Happiness gets you killed in our world. He leaned forward. Alessio was meant to lead this family, but he thinks with his heart when you're around. Makes emotional decisions instead of tactical ones. You mean he's becoming human instead of the machine you tried to create? Dante's smile was cold. You misunderstand. I'm offering you a choice. He slid an envelope across the desk. Inside is enough money to care for your brother for life. Take it and leave Chicago. Never contact Alessio again. And if I refuse, then watch as your noble sacrifice destroys him. The family won't accept a leader who puts love before business. His cousin Matteo will take control. Sophia's hands clenched. You'd do that to your own son? To save his life? Yes. Dante's eyes bore into hers. Love is weakness our enemies will exploit. Choose his survival over your happiness. Tears burned behind her eyes as she stared at the envelope. Everything in her screamed to refuse, to fight. But she'd seen firsthand how brutal this world could be. When? Her voice was barely a whisper. Tonight. A car will take you to a private airfield. Your brother's medical care is already arranged at a facility in Switzerland. Sophia stood on shaking legs, the envelope heavy in her hand. Her father's betrayal had started this tragedy. Now she would end it, by breaking both their hearts to keep Alessio alive. Sunlight pierced through the penthouse windows, casting long shadows across empty spaces where Sophia's belongings should have been. Alessio's hands gripped his wheelchair's arms until his knuckles went white, staring at the note on his bedside table. The paper trembled in his grip as he read it again. I accepted a better offer. Don't look for us. S. His chest constricted, memories of their last night together turning bitter. Every touch, every whispered promise, lies. He'd known her father was a traitor, yet foolishly believed she was different. The security footage confirmed his fears. Sophia and Marco had left at 3 a.m., escorted to a waiting car. She'd walked out without hesitation, her spine straight, never looking back. The betrayal burned worse than the bullet he'd taken for her. Over the next days, Alessio transformed his pain into purpose. He worked 18-hour days, orchestrating a massive offensive against the Costello family. His tactical brilliance, previously tempered by Sophia's influence, now emerged with ruthless precision. Send photos of what's left of their warehouse to the other families, he commanded his lieutenants after a particularly brutal raid. Let them see what happens when they target our interests. The warehouse explosion had eliminated 3 high-ranking Costello captains along with millions in drug inventory. His father watched from the shadows, noting how Alessio's orders grew colder, more calculating. The son who'd once shown mercy now demanded examples be made of traitors. Dante smiled, satisfied that removing Sophia had hardened Alessio into the leader their family needed. But while Alessio orchestrated destruction in Chicago, Sophia pursued truth in Detroit. She'd chosen a small apartment in a secure building, using Dante's money to ensure Marco's continued medical care, while hiring investigators to dig into her father's disappearance. "These numbers don't add up," she muttered, spreading bank statements across her kitchen table. The transactions that had branded her father a traitor showed irregularities. Times when he couldn't have accessed the accounts, transfers that contradicted his known locations. Marco watched her work with concern. "You should tell Alessio what you found." "He wouldn't believe me," Sophia's voice cracked. "Besides, your safety comes first. I won't risk Dante's retaliation." But each discovery pulled her closer to Chicago. Her father's old letters mentioned a storage unit where he'd kept insurance, proof of something that had frightened him in the weeks before his disappearance. The facility still existed, tucked between abandoned factories on the city's south side. 3 weeks after leaving Alessio, Sophia stood before the storage unit's rusted door. Her hand trembled as she inserted the key found hidden in her father's workshop. The lock clicked open. Inside, dust-covered stacked boxes and old furniture. Sophia's flashlight beam caught something metallic behind a shelf, a safe, small but heavy-duty. As she knelt to examine it, a sound behind her made her spin. The prodigal daughter returns, a man's voice, unfamiliar and cold. Though I suppose that's the wrong word, since you were never really part of the family. 3 men blocked the unit's entrance, their suits expensive, but their postures threatening. Sophia recognized their leader from surveillance photos, Anthony Costello, the rival family's underboss. "We've been watching since you hit Detroit," he continued. "Hoped you'd lead us to the money, but this is even better. Ricci's whore, delivered right to us." Sophia's hand inched toward her purse where she kept her taser. "You're mistaken. I have nothing to do with the Riccis anymore." "That's not what our sources say." Anthony's smile was cruel. "The cripple's been tearing through our operations like a man possessed. Clearly you meant something to him." "Meant. Past tense." Sophia's fingers closed around the taser. "He thinks I betrayed him for money. He won't care what happens to me now." "We'll see about that." Anthony nodded to his men. "Take her." Carefully, damaged goods lose value as leverage. Sophia struck first, the taser connecting with the nearest thug's chest. He convulsed and dropped, creating momentary chaos. She drove her knee into the second man's groin, nearly making it past them to the door. But Anthony caught her hair, yanking her back. Something sharp pricked her neck. As darkness crept in from the edges of her vision, Sophia's last coherent thought was of Alessio. He would assume she'd orchestrated this herself. Some desperate grab for attention or money. After all, betrayal was her father's legacy. The storage unit spun away into blackness, her body going limp in her captor's arms. She never felt them carry her to the waiting van, never saw Anthony photograph her unconscious form to send to Alessio, never heard him laugh about how perfectly she'd played into their hands. In his penthouse office, Alessio was reviewing reports of another successful strike against Costello Holdings when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. The message contained a single photo and 3 words. "Missing something, cripple?" The video played again on Alessio's screen, each frame burning into his memory. Sophia slumped in a metal chair, her face bruised, dark hair matted with blood. The Costello lieutenant's voice dripped with mock sympathy. "Such a pretty thing. Would be a shame to waste her. But that's up to you, cripple. Come alone to the Southworks factory by midnight, or we'll send her back in pieces. It's obviously a trap, Dante Ricci declared from his position at the head of the family's war room. The girl made her choice when she took our money and ran. Let the Costellos have her. Around the table, capos nodded in agreement. Only Gino, Dante's oldest advisor, remained silent, watching Alessio with calculated interest. Alessio's fingers tightened on his wheelchair's armrests until his knuckles went white. The movement was subtle, but it betrayed the rage building beneath his controlled exterior. He'd spent 3 weeks believing Sofia had betrayed him, channeling that pain into a brutal campaign against their rivals. Now, seeing her beaten and bound, something else entirely burned in his chest. "Clear the room," he ordered, his voice arctic cold. "Except Torres and Barrett." When only his most trusted lieutenants remained, Alessio wheeled to the tactical display. "They think my disability makes me weak," he said, pulling up building schematics. "Time to show them why it makes me more dangerous. When you can't run, you learn to fight smarter." He revealed surveillance data collected over months, backup generators, security blind spots, patrol patterns. But most crucial was a blinking dot moving through the city. "The phone I gave Marco before they left," Alessio explained. "Sofia keeps it with her to monitor his medical alerts. They don't know we can track it." His plan unfolded with surgical precision. While the Costellos expected him to approach from the ground, snipers would take position on surrounding rooftops. EMP devices would disable security systems. Teams would infiltrate through maintenance tunnels, coordinated by Alessio from his customized command vehicle. "Sir," Torres interrupted, "your father explicitly ordered." "My father isn't here." Alessio's smile was blade sharp. "And I'm done taking orders." The assault began at 11:30 p.m. From his position in the armored SUV, Alessio directed his forces through the Costello compound like pieces on a chessboard. Security cameras went dark. Communications failed. Tactical teams emerged from hidden access points, eliminating resistance with ruthless efficiency. But when they breached the room where Sofia's signal originated, they found only her phone and a mocking message. The lieutenant had moved her during the attack. "Pull back," Torres urged through the radio. "We can regroup, plan another—" "No!" Alessio was already moving his wheelchair to the building's service entrance. "They're not expecting me to come personally. That's our advantage." With only 2 guards, he followed Sofia's trail through maintenance corridors. The lieutenant's arrogance made him predictable. He'd want height advantage, clear sightlines. The industrial elevator shaft at the building's core was the obvious choice. They found them on a maintenance platform 30 feet up. The lieutenant held Sofia at gunpoint, her hands bound but her eyes fierce despite her injuries. When she saw Alessio below, something flashed across her face, not fear for herself, but for him. "Should have come alone," the lieutenant called down. "Now you can watch her die before I kill you too." Alessio signaled his men to hold position. With practiced efficiency, he transferred from his wheelchair to the shaft's service ladder. Upper body strength developed over years of compensation let him climb with surprising speed. "You won't make it up here before I put a bullet in her head," the lieutenant taunted. "He doesn't need to," Sofia said. Despite her split lip, her voice was steady. She'd worked one hand free enough to reach her pocket. "Because I found something more valuable than me." Her phone screen displayed financial records, transaction logs, offshore accounts, internal memos. "Your advisor, Gino," she continued. "He's been feeding information to the Costellos for decades. The same man who framed my father and stole those millions." Alessio saw the proof laid out in devastating detail. Account numbers matching known Costello fronts. Dates aligning with security breaches, his father's most trusted counsel, orchestrating a decades-long betrayal. The lieutenant's expression shifted from confidence to confusion. This wasn't part of his script. His gun wavered slightly as he processed that his hostage had uncovered something much bigger than a simple ransom plot. That moment of distraction was all Sofia needed. She drove her elbow back into his solar plexus, creating space between them. But as she moved, she saw his finger tightening on the trigger, aimed not at her, but at Alessio, exposed on the ladder. Without hesitation, Sofia threw herself forward. The lieutenant's gun swung toward her movement. The gunshot echoed through the shaft like thunder. "Sofia!" Alessio's anguished cry tore from his throat, raw with emotions he denied for weeks. Sofia's eyelids fluttered open, the sterile hospital room gradually coming into focus. Her shoulder throbbed dully, a reminder of the bullet that had grazed her 3 days ago. Through the haze of fading sedation, she registered pressure on her hand. Warm, familiar, anchoring. Alessio slumped in his wheelchair beside her bed, his usually perfect posture surrendered to exhaustion. His fingers remained intertwined with hers even in sleep, his other hand resting on his chair's control pad. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his normally immaculate suit was wrinkled from days of bedside vigil. She watched him breathe, remembering the terror in his voice when the bullet struck her, the way he'd somehow managed to pull her to safety while simultaneously directing his men to neutralize the threat. How he'd refused to leave her side in the ambulance. His eyes opened slowly, instantly alert despite his obvious fatigue. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the air heavy with unspoken words. "You shouldn't have come back," he said finally, his voice rough. It was reckless. "You shouldn't have come for me," she countered. "It was exactly what they wanted." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "We're quite a pair of stubborn fools." Sophia tried to sit up, wincing at the pull in her shoulder. Alessio immediately adjusted her bed, his movements gentle despite the tension in his jaw. "Your father," she started, but he cut her off. "I know why you left." His grip tightened on her hand. "He told me everything after we got you stabilized. The ultimatum, the money, all of it." "I couldn't let you lose everything you'd worked for," Sophia whispered. "Your father said—" "My father was wrong." Alessio's voice carried the sharp edge of barely contained anger. "And I never believed you left for money. I was already tracking you when the Costellos made their move." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks. "I found evidence about Gino, about my father. I couldn't just run away when I finally had answers." "Your father was innocent." Alessio reached up to brush away her tears. "Gino's records prove he orchestrated everything. The theft, the frame-up, even feeding information to the Costellos for years. My father." He paused, jaw clenching. "He's been forced to reevaluate many things." Over the next week, Sophia's hospital room became an unofficial command center. Alessio worked from a makeshift desk beside her bed, coordinating the massive restructuring triggered by Gino's exposure. She watched him navigate complex politics and power shifts while never letting go of her hand for long. Dante visited daily, his imposing presence softened by something that looked almost like regret. He brought updates about the investigation into Gino's decades of betrayal, along with quiet apologies disguised as business discussions. On the day Sophia was discharged, Dante surprised them both. "There will be a ceremony at the estate tomorrow," he announced. "The family needs stability after Gino's betrayal. They need to see strength in leadership." The next evening, Sophia stood beside Alessio's wheelchair in the Ricci Estate's grand ballroom. Hundreds of associates gathered, the air thick with speculation. Dante commanded attention from the moment he stepped onto the raised platform. "Strength comes in many forms," he began, his voice carrying to every corner. "For too long, I measured it only in traditional ways. I nearly lost my greatest asset because of that blindness." He turned to Alessio, and for the first time, Sophia saw genuine emotion crack through the patriarch's stern facade. "My son's strength was never in his legs, but in his mind and heart, qualities I nearly failed to value." Dante's declaration rang with finality. "Today, I name him my true successor, without qualification or reservation." The room erupted in applause, though Sophia noticed some faces remained carefully neutral. Change wouldn't come instantly, but this public declaration was a powerful start. Later that night, in the privacy of Alessio's penthouse, Sophia finally asked the question that had haunted her. "Do you think my father is still alive?" Alessio wheeled closer, taking her hands in his. "I've already put our best people on it. If he's out there, we'll find him. No more secrets, no more manipulation." He pulled her gently onto his lap. "We build our future on truth, together." Sophia settled carefully against him, mindful of her healing shoulder. The city lights sparkled beyond the windows, but she focused on the steady beat of his heart under her palm. They had survived betrayal, violence, and lies. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The broken girl who refused to break further, and the man whose greatest perceived weakness had become his strength. In his arms, Sophia finally felt the walls around her heart crumble completely. They were both scarred, both changed by the paths that led them here. But those scars had forged something unbreakable between them, a love tempered by fire, stronger for surviving the flames. The grand ballroom of the Ricci estate glittered with crystal chandeliers and elegant decorations, a stark contrast to the hotel venue where Sophia and Alessio first met. 6 months had transformed not just their relationship, but the entire dynamics of Chicago's most powerful family. Sophia adjusted the silk of her emerald evening gown as she watched guests mingle. No one avoided Alessio's table now. Instead, a steady stream of well-wishers approached to congratulate them on their engagement, each greeting met with genuine respect rather than the fearful deference of the past. The Foundation's new pediatric wing opens next month, she overheard Marco explaining to a group of investors. Her brother had flourished in the past months, his health fully restored. The designer suit he wore matched Alessio's, a deliberate choice that highlighted his role as personal assistant and protege. Your brother's got a natural head for business, Alessio murmured, his hand finding hers where it rested on the table. The diamond of her engagement ring, his mother's, caught the light. Better than most of my seasoned advisors. He learned from the best. Sophia smiled, remembering how Alessio had taken Marco under his wing, teaching him everything from financial strategy to the intricacies of their newly legitimate enterprises. The Ricci Medical Foundation had become Sophia's passion, providing care for families caught in the crossfire of gang violence. What started as a small initiative had grown into a network of facilities across the city, funded by the family's increasingly legitimate business interests. May I have this dance? Alessio's eyes held that mix of danger and tenderness that still made her heart skip. Their unique way of dancing, Sophia perched carefully on his lap as he guided his wheelchair, had shocked society at first. Now it was simply part of their legend. As they moved across the floor, other couples naturally made space. Alessio's upper body strength and precise control made their movements graceful, intimate. Sophia relaxed against him, remembering their first dance months ago when she'd been nervous about falling. I have something for you, he said, nodding to Marco, who approached with 2 wrapped packages. The music continued as Sophia opened the first, a thick, manila envelope. Her hands trembled as she pulled out recent photographs and documents. A man with gray-streaked hair, but her father's unmistakable eyes, sat at a cafe in Buenos Aires. He's alive, she whispered, tears threatening to ruin her makeup. Living under the name Gabriel Santos, Alessio confirmed. He's been working as a literature professor at the university there. My contacts confirmed it's him. He's safe, built a quiet life. And now that we've exposed Gino's betrayal, he can come home whenever you're ready. Sophia clutched the photos, overwhelmed by the closure she'd thought impossible. Thank you, she managed, knowing the resources Alessio must have dedicated to this search. Open the other one, he prompted, his voice soft against her ear. The second package contained property deeds and business licenses. Sophia's eyes widened as she recognized the address of the luxury hotel where they had met. You bought it? The hotel where a fearless waitress dared to approach the dangerous cripple. His smile held no bitterness now. It's being converted into residential medical housing for Foundation families receiving long-term treatment. The penthouse suite will be emergency accommodation for children like Marco. Emotion closed Sophia's throat as she remembered her desperation that first night, spilling champagne and facing termination while worrying about her brother's medication. Now she helped families in similar situations, backed by the full power of the Ricci empire that Alessio was gradually steering toward legitimacy. Some people find their fate in a chance meeting, Alessio said, taking her hand where his mother's ring caught the light. I found mine when a brave woman wasn't afraid to approach an empty table that terrified everyone else. Sophia touched his face, remembering all the transformations they'd survived together. And I found mine when I realized the most powerful man in the room wasn't the one everyone feared, but the one strong enough to let love change him. Their kiss drew discreet applause from nearby guests. 6 months ago, such a public display would have been unthinkable for the intimidating air, but Alessio had discovered that true power lay in the strength to be vulnerable, to trust, to love. The celebration continued around them, Dante discussing expansion plans with board members, Marco demonstrating new security systems to investors, Foundation doctors networking with healthcare partners. Their world had expanded beyond the narrow confines of traditional criminal enterprises, growing into something that honored both Alessio's strategic brilliance and Sophia's compassionate vision. Later, as they moved to the candlelit terrace for a moment of privacy, Sophia looked out over the Chicago skyline that had once seemed so hostile. Now it held promise, legitimate businesses replacing criminal operations, medical facilities offering hope instead of violence, a future built on redemption rather than revenge. Having second thoughts about marrying into all this? Alessio asked, only half joking as he watched her contemplative expression. Sophia settled more comfortably on his lap, her fingers lacing through his. Only thoughts about how far we've come from that first night. The angry air, the desperate waitress. We barely recognized our own strength then, let alone each other's. Alessio's arms tightened around her. We recognized enough to take a chance. Sometimes that's all fate needs. One moment of courage to change everything.